Baruch Hashem, we are live. Welcome to the Nilvah Nexus. James the Idol Smasher at gmail.com. Join our Facebook page and our new page here on Google+. Get you information and updates and anything else you want to talk about for the most part. Pretty much what we do here. A lot of yapping. A little studying here and there, and we can fit that in. It's Christian's night. We're going to see if we can get some of our Christian brethren in here. I noticed there was a particular group on Facebook, and they it's a debate group for New Testament versus Torah. And I've noticed that Christian folk are getting, they're kind of getting a bad rap. I think they're not getting a bad rap. They're getting a rough time. Maybe it's necessary. I think that we could do better. Because when Noahides are just getting cocky and it's like the worst atheist. You know, have you ever been to an atheist room and you come in there and you're a theist? Oh, they will haze the hell out of you. Literally, hell will come out of you. You'll type some of it too. I've been there a few times. It was worse. And I was really just shocked that I consider Christians our brethren under duress, but brethren, you know. Oh, there's some drama outside with the kiddos and the wifey. And daddy's locked safely here in the Nexus. Okay, so where was I? So anyway, I wanted to open up a room here for everybody in that particular group and another debate group here, the great debate community here on Google+. I opened up to that. We had an atheist night, and we had a few atheists show up and ask questions nobody else asks, and it was just beautiful. And so hopefully we'll get some of our Christian folk, our brethren and sister in here, and maybe we can get some more great questions that nobody asks. And put a bunch of Noahides together, and we're going to ask questions, and the whole thing will be like an inside joke. Nobody else would know what we're talking about because we kind of get focused on the Torah thing, as you might have seen in our other videos. But it is a Torah study, so we won't be studying some Torah tonight. And I want to give a plug to my good pal, and I never really got what it meant to have just a rabbi that you love, that you're just lovable rabbi, that you know that he's your pal and your rabbi, and you know. And anyway, this is his latest release. Laws of the Ger Toshav, the Gentile who regrets idolatry. You'll notice that there's no author. It does, on the front cover, it doesn't say by Rabbi David Katz or anybody else for that matter. You look here on the spine, and you won't see written by. That's because what this man has done for you here on the back cover, there he is. What he's done for you is he's cut and pasted this. The laws of the Ger Toshav, particularly the work of Rabbi Aaron Soloveitchik, Od Yisrael Yosef Benichai. This is actually a translation, direct translation is what this is. And it's quite a service he's done. He's got some rabbinic approbation on this. What he's done here is he's been able to codify what it means. You know, this is not all conclusive, but this is definitely a resource. This is no resources like this. It's not like the Divine Code. It's not necessarily universal because it does pertain to a particular Noahide. So get this on Amazon. It's just really good stuff. And maybe we can get into this. I've thought about I'm going to wait for a little while, but I do want to discuss a lot what's in this book here in the Nexus, like a hangout or two, maybe a series of it, possibly. So, what's going on? There might not be Jews showing up tonight. I planned a Christian hangout when the rabbi might not show up. This is Sukkot. This is Sukkot. This is the this is one of the high holidays. This actually comes in the Torah. You will go out into tabernacles. This is the closest Jews get to camping, basically. It's a week-long camp, kind of in the backyard, kind of. But they build a tabernacle, and it's in the shape of one of the Hebrew letters, for instance, a Hey. Hadassah, shalom, welcome. You would probably know a little bit more about the construction of a sukkah, and this is a thing that Noahides are doing. Being Noahide. It's a channel here on YouTube. They're good folk, and they have a video about Noahide setting up a sukkah, excuse me, a tabernacle, a booth. If you want to get a good idea, watch Ushpizin. Fantastic movie. You can probably find it out there on the web. Ushpizin, Ushpizin, Ushpizin. It's the welcome sacred visitor, the holy Ushpizin who comes to your sukkah, your sukkah, excuse me. So right now the Jews are out actually camping while we're doing the hangout. So we might not get Gavin here. We have Hadassah, which is good. Fortunately, you can be in a sukkah and still have a Nexus because of Wi-Fi. But you know how Wi-Fi can be. So that's what happens. There's no top on the sukkah, which is interesting. If it rains, then you get wet. If the sun shines, you stay warm. You're not supposed to seal off the ceiling. It has to be a palm or something that allows a connection with you in the heavens above. And I thought,
as long as you can see the stars.
Right. And I noticed last night here in Oklahoma City, it rained for 2 days, and it was a big rain. It was a glorious rain. It was wonderful. Little flooding here and there, but it was wonderful. The state got a good washing, and it just kept coming and coming, and wouldn't stop. And it stopped for a while. You know how it is. And then right at sundown, it just quieted down. And an hour and a half after sundown, 9:30, 10, I walk outside and the moon's out. It was just a beautiful thing for all the from folk here in Oklahoma City. That it worked out just perfect. You know, they might be sitting on wet furniture, but at least it's not coming down from above too, right?
Give me about 10 minutes. I'll actually be in the sukkah. I could actually shoot so some people what it looks like.
Cool. Yeah, we decorate, or we. See, this is the whole gear thing. I keep thinking I'm in Israel. Jewish people, you decorate the inside. It becomes homey. You live in it, don't you? I mean, that's what the whole thing's about, right? Have you decorated yours yet? Are you still doing that?
I actually have been using the ones put up by Shul and Hillel. I didn't do my own this year.
Cool. There's a chance I'm going to go up to the Kabbat house or call the Kabbat house and ask the rabbi up there and say, hey, Noahide wants to knock on a sukkah door. I just want to sit in a sukkah with a Jew and say it's been done. What do I got to do? What do you need me to do? I'm well behaved.
Well,
you know.
I want to catch him before Shabbat.
Yeah.
I was going to say, we have an open sukkah at Shul.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So they build it outside, and it's for...
Yeah, it's for the whole community, for people who don't have that don't have sukkahs.
That's awesome. Ooh. Now I got to call him. I definitely have to call him now. Nelson Alonso. Welcome. Bienvenue. Willkommen.
Hello. How are you?
Doing well. How are you, sir?
I'm great.
Welcome to the Nexus. I'm James. You got Rosalie, Chris, and Hadassah in here.
Hello.
What can we do you for? Are you Christian folk?
I'm an atheist.
Oh, no kidding.
Hey, you can join too. Everybody's welcome.
You're not going to be kicked out. We do, we're kind of we're the Hebrew-leaning non-Jewish folk here.
Okay.
And Jewish, don't get me wrong. But, I noticed in some of the groups that sometimes Christians are getting a bad rap sometimes. They kind of got to, having a hard time having a good conversation about why we would be what we are. Why would, especially for raised in the church and, maybe be an atheist. I think you might understand too. There comes a time when you have to, when your whole world shifts, when you discover things that, that speak to you that don't ring true, and you have to go the other way. You know what I mean?
Yeah. What do you guys think of the Christian argument that Jesus is mentioned in Isaiah 53
He's not.
Right? Or is it 54?
Is it 53 or 54?
53, I think.
Okay, okay. I'm going to bring it up here. I go to Mechan Mamre, bring it home. MECHON-MAMRE. Mechan Mamre. Great resource for quick finding. They got a Hebrew-English parallel that works really well. Yeah, 53, the suffering servant, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
If you
Okay.
go up a few verses, you'll find out that the suffering service is called Israel.
Yeah.
And it states
I'll take you back to chapter 40. Let me find it. Or is it 41? It's 41, I believe. We'll start with 41. And he'll name the servant. Thou art my servant, I have chosen thee and not cast thee away. Here it is, I'll read it from the top. But thou, Israel, my servant Jacob, who I have chosen, the seed of Abraham, my friend, the only man that God calls friend, Abraham, thou whom I have taken hold of from the ends of the earth, and called thee from the uttermost parts thereof, and said unto thee, thou art my servant, I have chosen thee, and not cast thee away. That's in 41, and he's twice named his servant.
James Ross needs in. Ross needs a link.
Ross needs in.
Yep, says need in.
Man, Ross don't need nothing, man. Shoot. Tell
Just
Ross.
reading what it says.
I'll tell Ross what he can do with his.
You ain't reading shit.
I'll send him a link, you know?
Yeah.
Hang on.
He might still be driving here.
Hopefully he's home by now. Ross, for all the fine folks out there, is a Houstonite. And yes, he
It was very, very beneficial in letting us know what was going on with Houston after Irma.
he was there.
Yep.
Well, I'm having a hard time even typing his name.
ROSS.
He doesn't go by that online. And our bearded ain't showing up no more. So I'm just going to Google Plus is fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I noticed that a lot of the Old Testament verses that Christians use are out of context.
Sure.
They'd have to be.
My favorite verses are Isaiah 43, 9 through 12. That just says it right there.
Isaiah 43, 9
through 12-ish.
All right. All the nations are gathered together, and the peoples are assembled who are among them, can declare this and announce to us former things. Let them bring their witnesses, that they may be justified, and let them hear and say, it is truth. You are my witnesses, saith the Lord, and my servant, whom I have chosen. Yet ye may not know and believe me, and understand that I am he. Before me there is no God formed, neither shall be after me. Even I am the Lord, and beside me there is no Savior.
That was my doer right there. It's like, yep, that's it. That says it all.
I didn't get to 12 yet. Hang on. That's really good. I didn't.
You can go down further and keep reading, and he goes, check me out, test me, blah blah blah, like this, I don't know. But right there, that little part right there, that was it. That's your clincher right there. Read it. They go but no, read it again. But no, read it again.
I'm going to go to 12. I have declared that I have saved, I have announced, and there is no strange God among you. Therefore, you are my witnesses, saith the Lord, and I am God. I had to finish it before I cracked up,
Yep.
What about the Emmanuel verse? Emmanuel.
He shall be called Emmanuel.
Yeah.
It's real good to say that after the fact.
No, that was for a specific birth. They knew who it was. The virgin birth, and that they did not mean a virgin. They meant a young woman. And that was for the birth of Emmanuel, a person named Emmanuel.
Interesting.
Nelson.
Yeah.
Oh, I know you, Nelson. Okay, I thought you were. I'm sorry, dude. I thought you were new.
I freaked him out.
No,
Okay.
I gave him ammunition.
I'm talking to people online trying to get in and get them links because you know how wonderful Google can be. It's the most wonderful pain in the ass ever invented by men.
Yeah. Can't get here through Firefox at all.
So you think the suffering servant is actually Israel?
It is. It says so. If you go
Israel
back, if you go up over and over, yeah.
It's
Israel
my
is also his son. Israel is also known as his son.
Yeah, Israel is my firstborn son.
Mm-hmm.
Over and over. I was reading it. I was going to have fun with it, but throughout Isaiah, especially anywhere, you know, usually you can find the answers to a question around the part that you're talking about. If you go like a few verses up or down, or maybe even a page or two over, you would be surprised how things are answered crystal clear. But when he names, and the only savior he names is, you know, Jacob, Israel, my servant, who I have chosen, over and over and over. So when we get to 53 and he talks about the servant, you can say it's Jesus, because in that particular verse, he's not named. And if you want to believe it's Jesus, that's fine. You're wrong, most likely because the only guy that God calls, the only name he gives is Israel. You know, over and over throughout the text. And for a Christian, that's great when you take the whole thing of Israel, which is a good thick book. It's a great read. And you get to that one little verse, I win. No. Isaiah beats you. Isaiah wins. God wins. So yes, to answer your question, absolutely. Savior in there, we could, you know, and he does say saviors later on in like 53, or not 53, later on in like 57, I believe. Your saviors. But he doesn't name them. The only one he names is Israel. So because that, we can't say that is Jesus, because the one savior he names, being the one savior, is Israel. Just by the words, you know, it's not even about belief. It's about what does God say. You look at God, okay, you know.
So can I ask you guys a question? Are you still waiting for somebody or something?
Oh, like Mashiach?
Yeah.
There are two.
Go ahead, Rosalie.
No, I was going to say the Mashiach is a person. It's not God reincarnate. The Mashiach would be like from the Davidic line and from the Joseph line too. There's one from the Joseph line and one from the Davidic line. So it would be like a king of Israel who's also from the Davidic line.
So it would be like a politician.
No, it'd be a king.
King.
A king.
Yeah.
Politicians left up to the
that would be the Sanhedrin.
Yeah. That'd be the judges and the courts, and that would be
Nazis. Yeah, NASI. Yeah, that would. Yeah, that they are the ones that play politics. He would be
Israel would stop being a democracy at that point.
Maybe not.
It would be a free society. It would be more closer to libertarian society. There will be a temple. There will be offerings. The priest has to eat. There'll be prayers on Saturday. Everybody stops working. Even if you're not Jewish, it's like, dude, take a day off. You have to take a day off. Don't work. Just chill out. That's what they're going to say. They're not going to regulate your home. But yeah, everybody, there'll be certain rules, but it'll be the civic law in Judaism is very secular. So it'll be a free society, but there won't be a majority rules thing.
I think I can simplify this in a way. When God gave the commandments at Mount Sinai, right after everybody left Egypt, there was about 3.5 million people that heard God talk all at once, okay? not one individual. This was huge. This was a whole nation heard God speak all at once. I forgot where I was going with that. But
Yeah, it was national. It was public.
when the Mashiach comes, it'll be the same thing. There'll be like an instantaneous God speaks kind of thing to the nations, plural, and they will go, okay, we get it. There won't be any denying of anything.
It'll be crystal clear.
Oh yeah.
You will know when the Messiah. There's an old joke. The student goes into the rabbi's house, knocks on the door. Rabbi, Mashiach is here. Mashiach is here. Rabbi gets up and he's like, what? He looks out his window, looks around a bit, and goes back to sleep. Rabbi, get up. Why am I have to get up? The Mashiach is here. No, he's not. What do you mean he's not here? You haven't met him. You got to come down there. He's talking to a whole bunch of people. How do you know he's not the Mashiach? You never met him. He says, because I looked outside. Nothing changed.
Yeah, that's the thing with Christianity too, right? It's like the guy died. He failed. And there's been so many failures, right? So many failed messiahs. And they always say the same thing, oh, he's spiritually something else. But they're not. The Messiah, you will know when the Messiah comes.
Yep. That's the beauty of it. That's why Jews are good scientists. They're not supposed to find the world in flesh evil. You know, go look in the world. Go test it. Yes, get to know your planet. Eat every fruit. You know the world you live in. Of course, you look at your eyes and ears. What do your five senses say? Of course, you go with that first. You know, you shouldn't have to need. You know, if you get a miracle, great. Don't get me wrong, but you shouldn't need a miracle to be a good person. You know, if God wants you to know something, you'll know. God will. You won't have any doubt. How do I know? If just don't worry about it. You'll know. Don't worry about it. He's probably not going to speak to you, but if he does, is okay. I hope Ross can get in here. I think he might be having a hard time. I'm going to send him one more message.
Does he need a link like he usually put up for me?
I've done that, but let me give you some invite power. You should be able to do this. Invite power. Okay, Hadassah, you're in a sukkah, aren't you?
Yes, I'm sitting in the sukkah. There's the roof.
So that's just green foliage, branches.
Yeah.
Tell us about the sukkah. What's it made of, and what letter is it? Because there are isn't it 3 letters that you make a sukkah? 3 Hebrew characters.
So I actually don't know. This is the one at Hillel. But they've got like decorated like little fruit hanging from the ceiling on top of the branches, obviously to make it kosher. But it's basically they have a wooden frame that's there all year. It's like kind of like an arbor frame, and then when it's time for Sukkot, they cover it up with like a tarp to make all the walls. There's a bench in here, and I don't actually know about the different shapes and whatnot. I know it has to be so big, and it has to have at least 3 walls, preferably full, like completely full walls. But half walls count too. 4 is actually the best. Like if you have 4 complete walls, a lot of people that have them at their houses will put their whole like living room furniture out there. They'll just move them out there, especially like in Israel.
Whoa.
But I'm going back in.
Well, that is awesome. So we are sitting in a sukkah. Digitally.
Yeah, kind of. In other words, my food is done, and I had to come back in and get it. Or I thought it was.
Hopefully we'll get Ross in.
Well, I've got him on Messenger and he's been messaging me, which I just found out. I didn't know he was doing that.
So, could I say, if I may make so bold, what is it? Why sukkah? Why? I mean, aside from the fact, obviously, first God tells us to do it. God tells the Jewish people to do it. Why? What is it about Sukkot that we learn? What do we learn from it?
Different people learn different things from it. You know, there's a lot written about it. This is actually the first time I've ever gotten to sit in a sukkah, the first year ever, and I've been in process conversion for 4 years. It's kind of hard to get invites for Yom Tov because you're not allowed to cook extra food for non-Jews on Yom Tov. But for me, like, you were talking about when Israelites were in the middle of the desert, they only had temporary housing, and it wasn't very secure. This is what our actually my rabbi talked about today, and you have to trust that Hashem's going to protect you, because you have very little protection, very little security when you're living in a sukkah. And he actually paralleled it to why in the Amidah that at the end we say who protects Abraham. So, you know, because Abraham also lived in a tent open to all four sides, and so he drew that parallel. For me, I think it helps me remember personally about people who may not have complete housing all the time. You know, there's a lot of homeless people out there. I think there's a moral lesson that can also be taken from a modern day perspective there. And, you know, that we should be kind to everyone that's around us.
It's a big thing to have visitors in a sukkah, isn't it?
Yeah, so, like, it's a huge mitzvah to have people over during Sukkot.
Does Isaiah 11:1 say the Messiah should be a Nazarene?
Hang on, let me get over there. Isaiah 11.
11:1.
And there shall come forth a shoot out of the stock of Jesse, and a twig shall grow from his roots.
David.
That's the road to Mashiach. That's the stalk.
Does that mean that the Messiah is a Nazarene?
No.
No.
A Nazarite. I mean, there is a town called Nazareth, but there's no. I don't think that it's. He'll be in the land. I'm pretty sure he'll be in the land, but he won't be. I don't know if there's anything to say what city he'll be in.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
But a Nazarite, one who takes a vow, doesn't cut his hair, doesn't grows his beard, abstains from all wine or intoxicants and women. That's not a heritage thing. You take that on individual. That's an individual thing that you do. If you want to devote yourself like that, then there is a way to. But it's not passed out from generation to generation.
That was like being a monk or something like that.
I noticed something. Can you find Ross, Rosalie?
Well, he's been messaging me, so.
I can't find him. Hold of him on Google Plus, but I'm having a hard time finding him. Yeah. Well, there he is. Link, he gets a message. I guess he's post on his page. Google Plus is just crazy.
I just relayed that message to him. I've got it under Ross Bearden. I don't put it under our Bearden.
I'm here. I finally got
There
it.
he is.
Yay!
Yeah, told you I could hack it.
Ross Nelson and Chris. Chris, I've known for 20 years. He's my bud. Nelson just joined us. He's asking about the Christian claims of Jesus in Isaiah. And he just brought up Isaiah 11, verse 1, and there shall come forth from a shoot out of the stock of Jesse, and a twig shall grow forth from out of his roots. The Spirit of the Lord shall rest upon him, the Spirit of wisdom and understanding, the Spirit of counsel and might, the Spirit of knowledge, and of the fear of the Lord.
I think probably the most talked about chapter in Isaiah. I think the most talked about chapter when it comes to Christians versus Jews is 53, Isaiah 53, right?
Yeah. And if you can even, let's look at 53 and compare it to what we've seen, what we can see in the world, what's claimed. For he was despised and forsaken by man, a man of pains, and acquainted with disease, as one from whom men hide their face. He was despised, and we esteemed him not. Well, if I'm not mistaken, a whole lot of people showed up to the sermon on the Mount. Children loved him. You know, surely our diseases he will bear, our pains he carried. Whereas we did esteem him stricken, smitten of God, and afflicted. You know, he wasn't afflicted. He was actually lifting other people from affliction. He was curing people.
So what do you think? How did this grow up? Why did this grow up from a Jewish religion?
Can you repeat that? I'm going to turn you up, dude, because
I'm sorry.
I want to make sure I can hear you. Can you repeat that?
Well, how did this cult, because it's a cult essentially, how did this cult blow up into a world religion? How did it blossom from this Jewish religion?
Christianity?
Yeah.
The
Politics.
first Christianity was Jewish, full-on Jewish, and a few Gentiles here and there. He was very popular.
Roman politics.
He was, you know, people who were Christians originally, most of them died, but it hung on, especially for the Roman people living under Roman rule, who were told of this salvation thing. And the Gnostic movement started about 100 years after. But it was really, in the end, with Constantine, it was Rome. It was Rome appropriating their religion as they appropriated others. They created Catholic. Catholic means universal. And what they've done, that's why Passover, so they have Easter Sunday, they're so close together, they've made it basically one event. They see you're all celebrating each other's religions. Under Rome, everything is one. Everybody's one religion. That's why they were able to incorporate people like Azrael and Gargamel and Loki and all these, you know, Norse gods and pagan gods into the
Greek as well.
They replaced. There was one king. His name's Nebuchadnezzar. His name is Nebuchadnezzar. Eliel. It means morning star. That was his name. He was a real human being. He was an actual historical guy, king of Babylon. And that was his name. That's what his name meant. So what the church fathers did when they saw that, they had their god over here with all these, you know, Celtic people running around in Europe, had this Lucifer guy. The Romans had the god Lucifer. They had their own little thing going on. So they said that must be talking about Lucifer. Even though when you read the whole context of that one chapter, it is obviously, unmistakably speaking about an actual historical figure, a man, a human. And yet they say that's Lucifer. And with that, they bring in a whole concept that's really nowhere in the Bible about eternal damnation, about an evil opposite of God in which God has no control and wages war on God, has power over creation, over God, and a war in heaven. Fallen angels, eternal damnation, war in heaven, an evil opposite of God that sets up war against God. None of that is anywhere in the text. It's the most antithetical thing to Jesus, to anything as we know of his Gospels. It's antithetical to anything in the whole of the Hebrew Bible. But you have a whole shed ton of Christians walking around believing the devil's around every corner. He's going to get you. and you know, and there's evil everywhere. And evil, and Satan did it. Satan's in the world. He's making everything evil. In Judaism, Satan's there to test goodness. That's it.
I'll contribute some things.
And yeah, go Ross.
Well, part of what helped it to gain a footing was that when Rome actually left the land of Israel, they destroyed the temple. They killed a lot of the priests and sages. They made sure that they burned all of the Torah scrolls they could find. They were going to completely decimate the land. They took everybody out, as you know, repatriated them to other places. So when you burn the books, destroy the temple, take the people, spread them out, disperse them, you've really severely weakened the structure. Christianity, for whatever foothold it had, yes, even in the beginning of Christianity, there were people hiding things. There were the Gnostic Christians. They were hiding their things. That's the Nag Hammadi discovery in Egypt, when they found all of these lost gospels in this jug that somebody had hidden in the sand to try and preserve them, to keep them from being destroyed. You had the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, the Gospel of Peter, the Gospel of everybody that never had the Judas. They found a lot of writings in there and in the Nag Hammadi. But to go on and further forward, like you said, yes, by the time of Constantine, 300, he has the Nicene Council. They bring as many people in as they can and try to, well, they really had to create as much as they could in the way of the four Gospels. And that's how Christianity got a footing. But another thing that you may have touched on, I don't know, but prior to this JC figure, there had already been Osiris and Mithras and maybe one other character, but I know Osiris and Mithras, each of whom had been born on December 25th, each of whom had 12 disciples, each of whom died and was resurrected. The story is pretty much the same, some few minor tweaks, but they already had a ready-made story, and they just planted JC firmly in the middle of it. And then Constantine too. It's always been the claim that he converted to Christianity. He saw the cross in the sky and he converted. There has been Simcha Jacobovici did a couple of episodes where he was allowed to go up on an elevator. Large crane lifted him up, and Constantine's Ark in Rome has every kind of pagan symbol on it that you can imagine, but there's not one single Christian symbol anywhere on it. And that famous painting of him being involved in that battle was actually painted 13 years after the event. Those are just some other contributing factors.
Wasn't Constantine baptized?
I'm sorry?
Wasn't he baptized, Constantine?
Back paid?
Baptized.
Baptized.
Baptized. B-A-P-T-I-Z-E.
Oh. No, that's also a myth. It never happened.
Anything like that was to happen, they claim that it happened on his deathbed.
Oh.
That was quick.
Possible. Hello. Yep.
And then if you look, there's another nice little, there's a book out. If you can get your hands on it, please do. It's called Sistine Secrets. Sistine, Sistine Chapel. And you know, we all know that that famous artist Michelangelo went in and painted all these various panels and scenes all over it, the cathedral. There is not one single New Testament panel anywhere.
So why did Constantine take on Christianity?
It was popular. It was, you know, Paul helped spread some stuff. People weren't stopped talking about it. The Jewish people had already been kicked out of Rome by now, 66 AD, most of them. And they were already making influence even before then out there in the world, especially in Europe and the places that Rome had their eyes on taking. So it was a great way to incorporate this Jewish God with the pagan gods. So when you go in and tear their town up, burn people and rape women and take their town and make it Roman, which is what Romans did, that you would have a religion that would incorporate your own.
Crowd control.
Rome, where all roads lead. It's not an unintelligent idea. It's smart in a lot of ways, you know.
Well, the more accurate reason is his opponent at the time, his biggest rival, I cannot remember the man's name, but his rival at the time did have a considerable number of Christians that were in his troops. And in order for Constantine to defeat him, part of his strategy was to claim that he had converted to Christianity, which then would cause the soldiers in his opposition camp to not think so badly of him. And then when the battle actually did take place and his rival foe was killed, the Christian soldiers did not have any reason to attack Constantine because he'd already convinced them that he had converted. That was part of his strategy.
So why convert?
I'm sorry?
Why convert?
He didn't. It was just a ruse that he used to appease the Christian soldiers that were in his opposition camp so that when he did defeat them, or the leader, his opposition, I can't remember the general's name, it's in history, you can look it up. After the defeat of his rival foe, he knew that if he didn't...
Why did the soldiers convert? What was so appealing?
They didn't want to be lion fodder.
Yeah, you had to convert. You didn't just reject the Church of Rome. You might as well reject the king of a country you're visiting or the king that conquered you. People were publicly tortured for heresy, which was questioning even the Church of Rome. They were famous for burning people at the stake because they, you know, there'd be a woman in there. Maybe she had some Druid teaching, Celtic teaching, who knows? But they go in and she'd know what herbs would cure a cold or what insect you would need to help cure a toothache or whatever. That was magic and witchcraft to them. And they burn you at the stake. I mean, they came in and raped and pillaged your town and said, if you don't go to our church, you die. A whole bunch of people who couldn't read. Even after generations of being under Roman rule, it was still prohibited for all peasants to read, let alone women and children.
Crowd control.
Yeah, I mean, it was the official religion of the state.
Yeah, we tell you what it says. You just have to believe.
They didn't have a religion before that.
They built the religion for it. That's Catholicism.
But before having Christianity, did they have a religion already?
Yes.
There were quite a few religions.
So
Mithras was one of them.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just saying there were quite a few religions, and Mithras was just one of those religions.
So why the transition?
Because Rome was expanding into Jew-dominated territory, for one thing. So, oh yeah, we know of Jesus. We know that, here he is on a cross. This is what we did with your king.
Uh-huh.
On another level, it's like this. The Greeks had Zeus.
Uh-huh.
Or was it? Okay. But
Greeks had Jupiter. Romans had Zeus.
Greeks and Romans had each of their own gods. You had, Trident on one side and Poseidon. Same god, different name, different cultures.
Yeah. Why the transition? That's my question.
Transition from what to what?
Like the Romans already had gods. They had the Greek equivalents, right?
Exactly.
What the hell happened that made them take on Christianity?
Part of the reason was, and if you research history, you'll see that throughout Roman history. Okay, you've heard of the Parthenon, right? Greek Parthenon?
Yeah.
Okay, and it was to the goddess Athena, right? Mm-hmm. Which you read about in the Christian Bible. So you've got Athena worship, you've got Zeus worship, you've got Trident worship, you've got all these various gods and all these various temples and all these various symbols all over the place. And then when Rome began to dominate, instead of building all of these structures to all these various gods, they felt like, well, we'll just pull it all into one. Mm-hmm. That was part of it. It was an economic strategy as well as anything. You can still find contemporary with early Christianity, you'll still find temples to Mithras. Mm-hmm. But it was easy to win the Mithras folks over because their stories were the same. December 25th, 12 disciples, burial, resurrection. The only difference with Mithras was the bull would stand on some slatted boards. Someone would slaughter the bull. The blood would rush down over the initiate who was in a pit below the boards, and he was then saved by the blood sacrifice. Mm-hmm. And in certain cultures where their bulls weren't plentiful, they would substitute a lamb, do the same ritual, stand it over the slaughtered boards, slaughter the lamb, the blood would run down, and the initiate then was saved by the blood of the lamb. Yep. This is all in history. I mean, it's all out there. You can research it.
The peasants already knew these days and whatever. So it was actually, they just incorporated the new Christian thing in with those dates because it was easier to get the people to actually, okay, we already have a holiday this day. Let's turn around and incorporate ours with there because they're already into this and we don't want to, make things worse than what they already are, and we've already got them captivated anyway. So we're just please the peasants and everybody will get along and be happy.
And it's brilliant because so many cultures were conquered by, lived in, traveled by road in Rome, that they could say you're studying each other's cultures. It was all one thing to begin with. It was really brilliant. I'm not saying I like it. I mean, the atomic bomb is brilliant. But it was a smart move on their part. The whole East, because they were thinking of going east. the idea, the whole concept of bishops, abbots, priests, acolytes, deacons, subdeacons, all that came from the East. 500 years prior to Jesus walking the earth was Buddha, and their system that they made up contained abbots, priests, acolytes, masters. You know, you had a structure like that. Rome borrowed from that, like Rome borrowed from the pagan beliefs. And you know, and I'll say this on a positive note, and I know we can always find a silver lining in a cloud. If John were here, he would remind me of that. Is that it does kind of sort of prove that there is some sort of universal thing that we do at the solstice, at the equinox. There are, you know, there is a good possibility, because we've had these roads and this connection, we've been able to explore the fact that, oh yeah, perhaps this one God thing did affect other areas of, you know, and it's been forgotten and changed, or something happened that morphed society. But yeah, it was purely political. It was purely an invention. Notice this, in the Great Enlightenment, 500 years ago or whatever, people, women and children began to learn to read. The peasants learned how to read. Even the peasants could learn science at that time. And the moment you see this begin to take hold, this idea of knowledge and not being afraid of it, which came with Columbus, which came after, you know, about the, you know, after the time that they got rid of the Jews, because they knew where it was going. The Jews knew it was an old universe. The Jews knew the earth was a sphere. People began to, I'm not saying politically, but because this whole freedom thing and freedom of knowledge, Christians became much nicer people. People who took on the religion, but didn't, you know, it's like the oppression of Rome left. A lot of the European, which is a good chunk of where, you know, Christianity had its foothold. America too. Well, America wasn't around at the time, but they learned more. They took to the old ways more. They became a much gentler people. The whole idea, and I say they, that's wrong. The entire church changed. Even the Catholic Church changed. When people began to be intelligent enough to read, things get better. And we've reached to the point now where people are leaving the church in droves, which is why so many are going to the Jewish people now.
Yeah.
I hope this is helping you. But there's my 2 cents anyway. Go ahead.
Another factor, if I may, Christianity, all throughout its earliest beginnings, had to have the Torah to stand on in order to validate itself. If it weren't for the Torah and God and creation and Him being the Son of God and so on, if it hadn't been for Torah, Christianity wouldn't survive. So, in one essence, Christianity did a positive thing because it needed the Torah, so therefore the Torah was preserved because of that. And what little bit of Old Testament reading any of the Christians may have done to try and support the New Testament, that little bit of Old Testament reading, I hate these terms, but they're necessary for the conversation, preserve some of that Torah knowledge. And now, because it has survived throughout the ages, and more people have learned to read and study, they begin to see the holes in Christianity. And one of the first people to see this was Sir Isaac Newton. And he did a very nice little, you can find this online, but he studied quite a few years and published it. Well, he didn't publish it at the time. It's out there now. He had to keep it secret at the time because they would have killed him on the spot. But the article title is 2 Notable Corruptions of Scripture. two notable corruptions of Scripture. He does note the main ones, but he goes on and delineates another 6 below it, where he shows that the Latins, or the Catholics, if you will, were the ones who did the most corruption of the earliest Christian writings. And the earliest Christian writings did not have JC in a lot of the places. They were added later. So what you're reading today was modified a considerable distance back, some about just after the Nicene Council, and then another one. I've got the article here, but I'm not going to bore you with it. You can look it up yourself. It's in Old English. You'll have to read it very slowly.
God save the king.
Right, but by the time I'd read it 3 times, the 3rd time through it, and I fully understood what he was saying, that's when I said, I'm done. I'm absolutely done. Not that I wasn't scared shitless, okay? It's not something you give up easy. But after thinking it through and rereading it, I had to conclude that somebody made this up. I'll stop there. Y'all go ahead.
Well, that's why King James got pissed off at the Romans and turned around and started the Anglican Church.
Right.
That's why King James got mad at the Roman Church and made the Church of England, or the Anglican Church, he made it up as he went along.
You mean Queen?
No, King James.
He was
Ergo King James Bible.
he was not known for liking women.
No, he was a pagan, crazy, partying fool, is what he was.
I think he had like 7 or 8 wives, didn't he?
That was Henry.
Oh, yeah.
Hang on, Henry the Eighth.
I am. Yep.
Henry the Eighth. I am. I've been married 7 times before.
King James wanted to get a divorce, and that's why he had it translated. He wanted to know what it had to say about divorce. That was his main reason for doing it.
That's
right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There's law in the Torah for divorce.
Yes.
In the Catholic Church, it's
That's a good question. What do you guys think of the slavery laws in the Old Testament or the Torah? Sorry, I grew up Christian, so I say Old Testament.
that's
No, you're fine.
you're
We
cool.
did
It's not. There's more times that God reminds Israel that they were once slaves in Egypt than there are laws governing slavery in the Torah. Because of the because of the horrific way that people were treated, it's got a bad rap. But in Judaism, for one thing, if you take a Hebrew slave, you have to free him after 7 years. All slaves, including non-Jewish slaves, get a freedom at the Jubilee year. If you go into slavery, you're either conquered by Israel, and then you don't kill the survivors. If you surrender and you say, you'll behave and not do idolatry, not curse our God, not murder, steal, treat animals badly, yada, 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 that's fine. So they would take people in and put them to work. They were slaves. So prisoners of war, there's no such thing. There's no debtor's prison either. So if you steal from somebody and they finally catch up with you and you're brought before a court, you become the property, literally. You become the property of the victim until your debt's paid twofold. At that time, you're released. If you're destitute, if you're on the breadline, instead of having homeless people, you can sell yourself into slavery to somebody, and you sign a contract. I'll feed you, I'll clothe you, but you're going to do whatever I want you to do. You're going to be my property, and I will make sure you're taken care of. You'll rest on Saturday. We'll take care of you, but you're going to be mine. If you're destitute and you leave your debts paid,
But
You know, it's not always a market of slaves, and you keep them and you whip them and you. It
Oh,
wasn't,
absolutely not.
you know, not quite like that. It's the
Slaves,
South.
a lot of slaves are treated very nicely.
You had to treat them nicely. They would be freed if you didn't treat them nicely.
Correct.
well, in one respect, like you said, there were no prisoners of war. There was no prison. There was no concentration camp. You didn't lock people up. This was, in a sense, the reverse of that. You put them to work. You make them useful. You make them productive. You don't just lock them up, give them 3 hots and a cot, because you see what happens in the prison system today. This particular aspect, or this way, actually makes them productive, useful, part of society. They contribute. Okay, you can actually go too far, and there can be a death penalty. But why spend all that money locking everybody up, letting them watch TV, work out with weights, and play basketball? That's stupid. I'm just saying it was a little more humane than locking them up.
There's a verse that says, if you beat them but they don't die, then you've done nothing wrong.
Right.
The only way you can
weird,
do,
isn't it?
the only way that you can beat them is if they refuse to do the duty that they're supposed to do. If you punch him and you knock his tooth out, he's free.
Yep.
If you yank him up and throw him on the ground or whatever, and you break his arm, he's free. You break a tendon, he's free. You know, there's a specific flogging that you do when somebody won't do anything. I'm not going to do that. I owe you money. I stole from you. I'm here. I'm not going to work for you today. You can flog him for that. But it's because he has a debt to pay. You know, he's indebted to you. But you know,
Beat somebody because he owes you money?
no, you beat him because he won't pay you back. You beat him. You would beat him to compel him. You can't harm him when you do so. So it's just trying to give him a pussy. You brute. You know, it's not like you can't beat the guy. You break a bone. You know, God, you lose your slave. You lost your money. You know, if you you know, but if you don't beat him bad enough, yeah, he has to work for you. He owes you a debt. The court, you know, that's
or you're beaten.
Or you're beaten. You will pay your debt. You know, theft is punishable. You know, it's punishable by death if you have to. You don't steal. God says don't steal. If you steal from somebody, you've broken a huge major law of civilized society. You cannot steal. If you do, you pay. It's much better, I think, for him and for the victim and society than it is for what we do today, where you rob a guy of his TV, you go off, you hock it at the pawn shop, you get some shit, you do your stuff, and you get whacked out for a night, and you go to jail for stealing a TV. The guy doesn't get his TV back. You're not doing anything but sitting in a jail in a concrete cell eating 3 square meals and cable. Society isn't any better because you're locked up. And no, if you stole from a guy, you owe him. You are
because I want to feed my sister.
Well, that's already covered by tzedakah. You're not allowed to, because you're always given the opportunity to get food in Israel. You don't starve. You do not let a person. There are actually laws. You have to let the corners of your field. You can't trim them. That goes to the poor. Anybody who's an outsider or sojourner can glean your fields. You can't stop them from going and picking up the stuff that your oxen plowed it and get. You have to feed the poor. It's a mitzvah. It's a commandment. You have to feed. If you don't feed the poor, actually, that's the one commandment that God says you can test me on.
Oh yeah.
Is giving tzedakah, giving to a worthy charity. He says, test me. on that. That's the way you want to grow financially. Give to the poor. Try me on it.
Well, that's
Yeah, you
interesting.
can't. If you're stealing for the poor, then that's the fault of, yeah. That's a whole different. If you have to feed, if that's the only way that she can be fed, then there's something wrong. With it. I don't think you're going to be enslaved for that. I wouldn't think so. Not in the Jewish court anyway. That would be rectified. You don't want to put somebody through punishment. You just want to rectify. You want to bring balance to society. It's not about you don't punish a guy for doing wrong unless he has to be. If he's nuts, like some people are, can't help killing puppies, you probably got to do something with this guy. He's got a problem. He can't stop raping. He's probably going to need. You're going to have to do something with them. You can't have. Some people have to be removed. Sometimes you have to kill him. If you lie in wait and slit a guy's throat to take his shoes, you deserve to die, and you probably will.
100% agree with that. 100%.
I talk big, but that's my perspective anyway. Go ahead.
All right. So, is there any indication in the Old Testament? I keep saying Old Testament. I'm so sorry,
dude.
I grew up Christian. I'm sorry.
I think everybody here was raised Christian. So,
what is the correct way to say it? Torah.
That's Torah, Hebrew Bible or
Hebrew Bible. Okay, I'm going to say Hebrew Bible. Now I lost my thought. Sorry. Anybody?
I hate when that happens.
Anything in the Old Testament.
All right. Okay. Hebrew Bible. Is there anything in the Hebrew Bible that says the Messiah might die and rise again 3 days later? Probably not, right? It's.
I'll take
everything.
No. Emphatically,
go ahead.
No. The Messiah not only survives, but he has children and sets up a dynasty.
Children, even.
Yeah, he has.
Wow.
He fucks. Yeah, the Messiah gets down. What's one of the one major commandments? You mount her. Dude, be fruitful and multiply. Yes, the Messiah will have children and a wife, and he will set up a dynasty. It'll be.
That's so different from Christianity. I grew up Christian, and hearing that would have blown my mind if I was still believing it.
They can say that why they wanted to kill all the Jews, because they had the real deal and they didn't. Yeah, the Messiah has children. I shouldn't have said the F word. I'm sorry. That's not kind wordage. Don't say fuck. Bad word.
Damn.
But yeah, that's where babies come from. And that's exactly what God commanded Adam to do, and all creation. So yeah, that's what the Messiah does, of course.
Because the thing
Sex is bad. What a great way to control people, huh?
The thing is that
who would have 3 or 4 wives at these festivals where everybody mounts everybody, and what a great way to keep them in line.
You're killing me, James.
Sorry.
You're killing me.
the thing is that the Hebrew Bible says there's only one God. It keeps saying it over and over again. There's only one God, one God, one God, one God. There's nothing besides me. I created this earth by myself. And then in the New Testament, Jesus says, I am God, whatever. And then there's the Holy Spirit is God, and everybody's God in the New Testament. And so they created this doctrine of the Trinity to, I guess, kind of resolve those contradictions, I believe.
In that particular article that I mentioned to you, 2 notable corruptions, Sir Isaac Newton deals with that very issue, the issue of the Trinity. It was a notion that was picked up and developed, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, from an earlier concept of God himself, blood, and water. Not entirely sure where that originally was, You can go back and read the article for yourself. He deals with the Trinity issue. But once you come out, you start to look at it, and on one hand, he says, I and the Father are one. Well, if that is absolute truth, and if he was hung on the cross and he died, and God died, and if God died and God was the creator, then all of creation died. Okay, that's one way of looking at it. It just, on a lot of levels, it never makes sense. I'm going to ask you one question. How long have you been out of Christianity?
About 2 years now.
Okay. John says, for whosoever shall believe, blah, 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 right? When there were two different people, three actually, three different people that walked up to his, and all three of them, no, two out of three asked the same question. One was the lawyer. You remember this story?
I don't.
The lawyer asked him, what should I do that I might inherit eternal life? JC responded, what is the law? How do you read it? You should love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your mind, and all your soul, and love your neighbor as yourself. JC responded, do that and you shall live. Second confrontation was with a scribe. The scribe comes up and says, he asked JC, how do you read the law? And he pretty much responded exactly the way the lawyer did. To love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your mind, and all your soul, and treat your neighbor with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So the scribe said, you have answered well. And then he asked him no more questions. Rosalie, you know these stories, right?
Absolutely.
The third incident was the rich man, the rich young man.
Yeah, the rich man. A needle.
Give up all your riches and follow me. Now, he asked the rich young man, are you keeping the law? And he said, yeah, I've honored my mother and father, and I haven't stolen and, haven't killed anybody. He's not quoting the first two laws. He's quoting the lesser laws. Did you notice the difference here?
He's quoting the laws that refer to parents. Right?
He's not loving God or his neighbor first.
Right. He's putting his money first, and he's being kind to his parents, and he's not stealing. He never said anything about to love God with all your heart, mind, and soul, or your neighbor as yourself. So JC says, aha, why don't you go give up your stuff and come follow me? At any rate, why would he tell a lawyer and a scribe that those are the things you need to do to inherit eternal life? And then John turns around and says, no, it's really all you have to do is believe that.
Yeah.
What?
No, all you have to do is believe.
Yeah. God gave his only begotten son, blah, blah, blah. That's John's creation.
So, bottom line is, this story is weird or just contradictory.
It's weird and it's contradictory in a couple of places. And if you look at the writings of Paul, twice, you'll have to research it, but twice you will catch Paul using the phrase They say yada, 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 but according to my gospel,
Mhm.
twice he uses that phrase. So is Paul preaching his gospel?
Hmm.
Yes.
As a matter of fact, Paul did invent what is called Pauline Christianity. And a lot of people can't see the difference between Pauline Christianity and the other Christianity, but Pauline is where a lot of people lie or fall in line.
Right.
I don't think Paul actually believed he rose from the dead. Bodily, at least.
You believe what?
I don't think Paul believes that or believed that Jesus rose bodily from the dead. I think he. Am I right on that? Or
I'm not sure what he believes. He never met JC. I mean, the only experience he ever had was this vision on the road that only he could see and nobody else.
like a
Just
ghost?
like Muhammad.
What do you guys think about that? Was that about Paul? He was once a Jew.
Hmm.
No, he wasn't. He's
He
the
was.
biggest anti-Semite. Anything the Jews said, he did the opposite.
It depends on what you believe is written by Paul, because there are some accounts where he does go to the temple, he does give an offering to the Levites, the priests, and you have other areas that where he's talking about the devil rules the world. So the evil one rules the world. What was the other one? The prince of the air that causes sin, or something like that, and he gives identities to a false god. Doesn't sound very Jewish. I mean, sometimes he sounds Jewish. Maybe crazy. Maybe he's trying to preach to the Gentiles so Rome doesn't kill them. I
Yeah.
know there's one teaching that says that Paul wound up going back home. He went back to Judaism in the end. That's why they killed him.
Well, the one thing that has got me about Paul's writing, one of the things, the church would boast, jump up and down, and say, this is the part where Paul said, to the Jew, I'm a Jew, to the Gentile, I'm a Gentile, to the rich, I'm rich, to the poor, I'm poor, whatever, okay? Whatever audience he was, huh? Do what? Somebody said something. What was it? Oh, whatever. They were bragging about how humble he was to, be on equal footing with whomever he spoke to. But on the other hand, that's like the worst kind of snake oil salesman you can. What's your ailment? Arthritis. Well, my bottle of stuff here will cure your arthritis. The next person he meets, what do you got? I got bursitis. Well, I got something here that'll cure it. Whatever he's got in the bottle will cure anything you've got. He just morphs to convince you.
Paul in Acts also gives a genealogy similar to the ones given in Luke and Matthew. 3 genealogies of Jesus. Get this. Every single one of those genealogies, including Paul's, puts Jesus as a descendant of Jeconiah. Jeconiah was a descendant of David. We all know that the throne of David is upon which Moshiach will sit. It's the throne of David. It's the house of David. It's the house of Judah. And he has to be of the line of David to get into or to become Messiah. Jesus is said to be descended, and some of them, the genealogies don't match up and they're contradictory. But the one thing that one of the things others they do agree on is that he's a descendant of Jeconiah. And this is what God says about Jeconiah in Jeremiah 22, a prophet I think 300, 400 years before Jesus was born. This is what God has to say at the end of Jeremiah 22. In this man, Jeconiah, a despised, broken image, he is a vessel wherein is no pleasure. Or he's actually asking a question. I'll repeat that. Is this man, Jeconiah, a despised, broken image? Is he a vessel wherein is no pleasure? Wherefore are they cast out, he and his seed, and are cast out into the land which they do not know. O land, 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 hear the word of the Lord. Thus saith the Lord, write ye this man childless, a man that shall not prosper in his days, for no man of his seed shall prosper, sitting upon the throne of David, a ruling any more in Judah. What this is saying is, descendants of Jeconiah will never be successful at anything. They cannot sit on the throne of David. All three genealogies, but Jesus descended from Jeconiah. When they put that book together, they knew he was a failed Messiah. It's kind of funny. Jesus says, let the Son of Man be risen up like the staff of Moses. We go to 2 Kings. What happens? People took the staff of Moses and began to worship it. They served incense to it. Probably prayed, gave flowers. They served it. And what happened? It had to be destroyed. It became an idol that had to be destroyed. The staff of Moses had to be destroyed. Why would you destroy some great piece of archaeology 800 years later? Because people were worshiping it. They found so much reverence in it that they were sidetracked. That's what happened with Jesus. Buddha's the same way. Buddha said, put your gods down, they're meaningless. There's one way, middle way. Jesus was Jewish. He was idol smasher. He didn't want to, he wasn't an idol worshiper, an idolater. He didn't teach his people to worship false gods. Jews don't do that. And yet, what do? They made a big, fat, golden image of Buddha, and they're Buddhitarians. They bow to it. What do they do on the West? They made a big, fat, dead man on a stick and forced a whole bunch of people for 1,000 years to bow to it. They still do. Bowing down before an engraven image. That's exactly the second commandment. Do not do that. God spells it out for you.
And it goes on beyond that. There are statues of Mary that people will kneel to, bow to, kiss, whatever. Got the Pope in his ring, and it's just human idolatry. And that's just the worst form. The absolute worst form.
So what is the real Messiah supposed to do?
He marks the world. He marks world peace. When he comes, the world will no more. They will stop warring. They will turn their weapons into plowshares, or energy, if you will. Nations will make peace with each other, and the knowledge of God will spread coast to coast worldwide. It'll be obvious. People will stand agape with their mouths open, with their hands covering it. Oh, it'll be that obvious. He heralds. The thing that he does is he sets up a dynasty. Mm-hmm. Everything will be cleared up. The law will be cleared up. Judaism, Christianity, Islam, all the other religions, Buddhism, everything will be cleared up. What he does is sets up a dynasty that will run the world at peace. But what he really does, because there's no the Messiah in the Old Testament, you won't find HaMashiach anywhere. What he does more, we find more examples of what the world will be like when he shows up. And what happens when he's here. He sets the law straight. He marks the end of converts. All the Jews are going to go home, and the nations won't fight each other anymore. There'll be world peace.
One nation.
No, there'll be what nations survive. Will be nations. Some people believe that the Irish folk will go back home. The Celtic folk will go back home. That the Indian will rule the land here. But
It'll be back
we'll-
to monarchy based.
kind of, sort of. It'll be the law is
On a world sphere.
everybody will know God already. It'll be obvious. It'll be second nature.
Again, that's where, that, like I said, when you at Mount Sinai, 3.5 million people heard God all at once. Okay, it'll be the same kind of thing, but instead of just at Mount Sinai, it's going to be worldwide.
I read the Christian version of that story. He went up to the mountain, and when he went up, he was there for so long that everybody went nuts, pretty much.
That's true.
That's the golden calf. Yeah.
Yeah.
God's presence was right there, but they had to have something. Moses went around, so they had to make something.
They got desperate, I guess. Desperate, right?
Yeah, well, at the time also, you have to remember too, the sacrifices were for feeding the Levites and taking care of the Levites and their families because they had no portion in the land. So that's where that went. And so what do? You make a golden calf. God, the most precious metal on earth, gold. They decided that's what they were going to make out of it. And it was more or less like a go-between for him and God. I read a certain thing in the one book that I'm reading to where we don't apply this and we don't know exactly why that was that way, but in a way it'll open up a can of worms, and I don't want to do that right now. But yeah,
but God got quite angry, didn't he?
Yes.
And he killed people.
Thousands, yes.
Why?
Because he said, there shall be no graven image of me. And the reason why Moses broke the tablets was because God had written those, and it was the covenant with them. God already stated that he would not wipe out these people. If Moses were to turn around and take them down there to everyone, anyone that was there worshiping that calf, Israel is the type of thing, when one Jew sins, the whole nation sins, not just one person. So if Moses were to take those down there, that would have made God look like a liar. I think because he'd have to kill everybody. And he already promised Abraham that his descendants would be like the stars and the sands and all that. So that's why Moses broke them. Because that would make God have to follow through with saying something that would have made God a liar, and that would have been the end of the earth as we know it.
Let me put it to you this way. Look at the nations of the people who were idolaters at the time. You can already look at Egypt, but let's look at like Molech, where you offer your children in fire to the belly of the horned god. This was idolatry. Now God shows up, performs, the seeds part, miracle after miracle after miracle. You're being taken care of. His presence never leaves. When it comes down on Sinai, the mountain trembles and there's smoke and lightning and God's speaking to you. That presence never left. Moses left. And there are a lot of people who came with them out of Egypt that weren't Jewish. They weren't of Israel. They were what we call the Erev Ra, the mixed multitude. There's a whole bunch of people that left with them who were still steeped in idolatry. So you have a God that comes up and saves your ass, and he's never left you, but you have to make an image, and he just said, don't do it. And they said, we will not do it. They all said that he read the book of the covenant to them, and they said, we will do this. So they made a vow before God about God, and then when they turned to an engraven image, what's God supposed to do?
A slap on the wrist.
Okay, another thing too that we need to take into consideration.
At that point, you are denying reality. And there's no place in the nation of priests for people who deny reality.
Another thing also that
it's hardcore, at that particular time. We won't experience that nowadays, but at the time, yeah. You spit in the eye of the God that saved you, you're going to get what's coming. Go ahead, Rosalie, I'm sorry.
You have to remember too that God's presence, when he was there, when he spoke to all these people, They literally died, and God had to resurrect them each time he spoke. And it got to the point to where the people said, we can't take this. Just talk through Moses. He's used to it. That's why Moses basically, that's why the people sent Moses and said, yeah, we're behind you, Moses. You go ahead and talk to God. You're not dying. We are. They just couldn't handle the enormity or the presence of God.
Does he give up?
Okay. No, with that said,
Sorry, go on.
these people have witnessed miracles after miracles, or what we would consider miracles, daily basis. They have been in God's presence so long they started taking it for granted. So things that actually happened then, we would call a miracle, they used to take for granted. Because that's how far set away from God that we are now. And if you read the literature and the history and you start out reading it, the more you read it, the actual more you can literally feel God's presence leaving. And it's sad. So, like I said, for them to make a calf, and like I said, the idea of being around God, they just took it for granted.
And these weren't all Israelis that did this. You'll notice the language in the Torah.
Exactly.
Whoever was doing it called out and said, "Hear, O Israel, this is your God." Yep. So most of the sages see the event was not spurned by Israelites, but by the foreigners and the idolaters who came out with them. And they made their gods. Not everybody died, but
no.
And it was harsh, man. It was harsh. It's not a happy thing. It's not seen as a glorious, wondrous. You know, we don't mentally get ourselves off with that sort of thing. It's not a good thing that it happened, and that they died. That's horrific. It's anything short of horrific. It's nothing short of horrific.
It is because the people who were in idolatry had no clue. You have to remember too that the Jewish people were a chosen race to take care of God's word. So when the Jew is blessed, they're blessed twice as much. When they are punished, they're punished twice as badly.
How did the Jews?
But the thing is that the idolaters did not know this. They really didn't have a concept of that, as well as our world does not really have a working concept of that as well. That's why most Jews are really, really hated for one thing or another. Granted, some of them, they might have, they probably got it coming because we're all human. But the closer to God and the higher your vibration and closer to God, the more you are hated, because it's that sinning idolatry inside of us that doesn't get it. And they're that pure of what's left of being pure that it just makes everybody angry all the time.
Nelson, were you going to say something?
Was the law given to other nations before it was given to Jews, or were Jews chosen for a reason?
Yes, it was. Genesis 9, we had the flood. Those who survived the flood were given a covenant. God made a covenant with me here, the covenant of the rainbow. Mm-hmm. 6 colors of the rainbow. You combine all the colors and you get another color, right? You get white. Or if you're painting, you get brown. He says this covenant, you don't make engraven images or worship creation. Don't make sculptures, images. Don't worship stars. Don't worship mountains. You don't curse God. You don't murder. You don't steal. You don't engage in illicit behavior. You don't eat the flesh of a living animal. You have to properly treat nature. You can't abuse the vegetation or the animals. And when you combine those laws together, you have the positive commandment to set up fair and balanced courts of justice. If man's blood be shed, then by man his blood shall be shed. That's actually the establishment of courts of justice in the Torah. So that covenant was given to everybody. If you are a human being, if you're Homo sapien, you have that law of all humans, whether you believe in God or not. Notice it didn't say believe in God. It said don't commit idolatry. Honestly, atheists, if they're not cursing God, they got it made, because or at least on 2 laws, they don't curse God because they don't believe in him, and they don't know the name of God, and you're not going to catch an atheist bowing down to or serving an object or creation. You're not going to find that. So that's the universal law. What he gave to Israel was that which was remembered from Noah on through Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Shem, the son of Noah, that Torah had been, somewhat preserved, particularly through the Levites who did not become illiterate in Egypt, who didn't forget the way. What was given at Sinai was an establishment of the law written into a nation, to be an example, a light to the nations. But yeah, there was a Torah given before Sinai, and it's universal. That's what we call the Torah of Shem. It's the universal law that applies to all humans.
Or the 7 Noahide laws.
Or what we call 7 Noahide laws, or 7 categories of law. Don't murder, don't have sex with your sister, don't rip the leg off a donkey and chow down. It's pretty easy stuff, man. The one positive commandment, mankind has to get their asses in gear on it, my personal opinion. As a whole, we all fall short, yada yada. But if we can get courts of justice down better, I think we would be. I think that if we concentrated on that, we might receive a lot of blessings in the world. Our sense of justice is not, I don't think, healthy. I think we want justice. We thirst for it. We strive for it. We do pretty well in the United States. I'm not necessarily knocking it. I think we could do better. If we had a Torah-based court system, it'd be much better, much better.
Absolutely.
I have something.
A Torah-based court system would entail stoning, wouldn't it?
If you have to.
Yeah.
You don't want to be.
God's a preserver of life.
You don't want to be a bloody court. It's not a good thing to have a bloody court in Judaism. It's rare. There are other ways around it. I mean, yes, you are liable for death if you steal. How dare you steal? You gotta get your head knocked out.
Your head cut off.
Yeah, you should, but there are ways around that. If there's a way that we don't have to kill this guy for him to rehabilitate, or for that matter, pay his debt, we can do it. You lie in wait and murder somebody, yeah, most likely you'll be beheaded. There's 3 kinds of execution in Torah, and that's it. Stoning is where you're thrown from a high place. If you aren't dead when you get down to the bottom, then you can pelt them with stones. Otherwise, you're thrown from a high place. The other one is hanging or strangulation, whatever, and beheading. Anything else is torturous. You're not allowed to torture in Judaism. You can't hang people up on a cross. Totally Roman.
That's something for you.
If the Jews killed Jesus, you wouldn't be wearing a cross. You'd be wearing a lump of jelly.
Oh, God.
You wouldn't be wearing a cross. That's a Roman form of, this is what we do to people who speak out against Rome. We're going to make you a public spectacle.
That's so true.
I heard you, Ross. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Ross. Yeah.
His question was it offered to other nations before Sinai? And that, interestingly, is the very last parsha that we're around. And it begins exactly that way. It says, and this is the blessing that Moses, the man of God, and verse 2 says, he said, Hashem came from Sinai, having shown forth to them from Seir, having appeared from Mount Paran, and then approached with some of the heavenly myriads. If you read the commentary there, it says that it came from Sinai to reveal himself to Israel, which he gathered there to receive the Torah. Having shown forth to them, the Israelites, from Seir. Seir is east of Sinai, the direction of the rising sun. That is where brother, Jacob's brother, Esau, Seir. And then it goes on as having shown forth to them from Paran. Paran was where Ishmael died or resided. So what you've got is Seir is the Israelites. You go back one step, Esau, Jacob's brother, he refused it. Go back another step to Ishmael, he refused it. Ishmael was a descendant, obviously, of Abraham. So was Isaac. And then later on, under Isaac, you had Jacob and Esau. Esau went the way of Ishmael. So yeah, Abraham truly was the father of many nations. Hello?
Yeah, there.
Okay. Scared me there for a minute.
There's still pictures down below, Ross. You're good.
The verses right in the Exodus that Moses was seeing smoke during the day and fire during the night, right?
The cloud pillars, yes.
Sounds like a volcano to me.
Volcanoes aren't movable.
It was moving.
Yes.
Okay. Never mind then.
Yes, the pillars of smoke and light went out ahead of the Israelites and did basically scouting work and whatever and let them know what was happening and what they were getting into. And that's where God said, well, this is who you need to take out and who you need to conquer, et cetera, et cetera. Or who is going to be your friend, et cetera, et cetera.
And some people were friends, but you know, when you're in a civil, I mean, people gripe about that, about the Old Testament. I think when they hear about it and they talk about it with me, especially in the Great Debate community, people don't get. Well, God says to go in and kill these people and conquer them. It's like, well, look at what the Torah says about these kind of people. They offer their kids to the freaking fire. They don't deserve to freaking live. Well, that's just murder. You go and you murder those kind of people. Yes, that civilization needs a good enema. And if Israel must provide, then Israel must provide. I find no shame. I have no guilt whatsoever. God says, go in and conquer these people. They're sick. Some of them would put their sewers on the top of a mountain. They would put, or a hill. They would put their temple at the top of the mountain. And everybody shits there, and the shit rolls downhill. And what do they do at the bottom of the hill? Have orgies amongst their own feces. But how do you worship their God? You go up and you shit on this sacred stone, and you get a free whore. That's how, you know, that actually happened in the Torah, and some of the Israelites fell for it. You mean to tell me that I defecate on that sacred stone, and I get a prostitute? Yes, but you're going to be wallowing in your own shit when you do it. Those kind of people need to go away. We need to get rid of those kind of people.
Sounds real familiar.
We need a law where prophet, king, and slave are one under the same law. That's the system we need.
Yes.
That's what Judaism.
You would have killed the Amalekite baby.
Okay. Amalekites were. It wasn't just the babies; it was the animals that were corrupted.
You would kill a baby.
This is what happened. You would be putting that thing out of its misery. And God, let me put this to you. God gave that command knowing they wouldn't do it.
They did it, though.
They weren't going to go it. But he was telling them, this is how corrupt these people have become. They've corrupted their youth. They've corrupted their animals. They've corrupted their livestock. Their vegetation is corrupt. That's how sick and demented these people were. We get a glimpse of that in the flood. God saw the evil of man in the earth itself. That means that God corrupted the earth. That means that what was growing out of the earth was corrupted. Aborted fetuses were one of the things in the soil. that corrupted the earth back before the flood. You know, God wouldn't wipe a people out like that if they weren't sick, you know, and demented.
There was a tablet, the Amalekite tablet, and they worshipped a different god called Chemosh, which pretty much said the same thing. So it's like two sides of the same coin, right? You got it was in two primitive tribes warring with each other. That's all it was.
I wouldn't be able to kill the babies, but when you look at it, the Jews couldn't kill the babies either. If you read the story, the Jews couldn't bring themselves to do it.
They did it though.
No, they didn't. They couldn't do it. They took the livestock and they took slaves, and God said, "Kill them all." And so their punishment.
Samuel couldn't kill the calves, or something like that, right?
I don't. Oh, Samuel was later. I don't know about that. Oh, it was Samuel. It was Samuel.
The women and the children, they said. They killed the men, but the women and the children.
I don't remember.
I know what you're talking about.
Oh, don't cry.
She's upset. He comes in here and starts flipping pages and making a mess. And
hi, Catherine.
Hi, Catherine.
Hi, Catherine.
Hi, Catherine. Don't cry.
I know what he's talking about on the Amalekites.
I do too. Now that go ahead.
It was under Saul when Saul was king, and my two buddies there, my two Kenite friends, commanders, told Rahab and Banah go clean out the Kenites because Saul was about to go and attack the Amalekites, as he was directed to do. The instructions were to take no booty, but they brought the cattle back, which they shouldn't have done. That should have been slaughtered in the kill too. Samuel got pretty upset at Saul because he didn't keep the command to slaughter all of them. Matter of fact, I think the story goes that he even brought the king back.
Yes.
Yeah, which he shouldn't have done.
No.
Could you slaughter babies? Even if God said you should.
Well, they didn't. So I couldn't. I'll tell you that right now. No. I would have found a doorstep somewhere. I don't know, man. I couldn't do it. They couldn't do it either.
Okay.
No, but God says wipe them out. He means wipe them out.
And that's why Amalek is something that haunts Israel to this day, because Israel didn't nip it in the bud and it survived. So you know, God gave the commandment knowing they couldn't do it, knowing they wouldn't do it, but He gave the commandment anyway. Why would He give a commandment like that?
Why?
Because I can tell you why. Because God rid the earth of everything that was evil by water and by the Rainbow Covenant. He said He would no longer do that. So now that put that upon the men to do it.
It happened. Rosalie, it finally happened. I'm going to mute you. I love you. I love you.
Go ahead.
Okay. It's not a pleasant thing to think about. But yeah, I couldn't do it. I know God commanded it. God had good reason for commanding it, but even His people couldn't bring themselves to do what He asked on that particular end, and it's haunted them to this day. That was kind of the lesson of that. Yeah, I couldn't. I'll be honest with you. I mean, if God told me to do it, but I don't know if I don't know. I don't think I could do it. Not babies. I don't know, dude. That's rough. I know, it's rough. I don't think anybody here could. I don't know. Hey, Chris, could you kill babies? Humankind.
If God told me to, no, I tell God to go fuck himself.
Let's hope it doesn't come to that.
That's rough.
I mean, I'm sorry, but if that were the case, I would have to have a serious talk with God, because apparently God can be wrong sometimes.
Yeah, Gene Simmons was like, what would you say? He goes, the one thing I would have. I'm not saying there's no God. I'm saying that if he came, I would have to ask him why. He had a list of questions. Why? Why would his mother survived a Nazi concentration camp? So,
yeah, I would definitely have questions. One of which would be, what's your justification for this? I'm going to need some serious convincing if you want me to follow this order.
I can't blame anybody for thinking that anymore. I think it was rough. I think I had a rough view of it a couple of years ago, but the more I think about it, I want to be, I would personally, maybe I could, I don't know. Killing babies, that's a rough thing. I've never been able to come to terms with that myself.
My own question to God would be, where are you? What are you doing?
Yeah, like, you're God, you're all powerful. You do it. Like, you could do it with no effort.
Well, you have to ask yourself, why would God give this commandment knowing that it couldn't be fulfilled, or that it wasn't going to be fulfilled? And why is he teaching us? Why did he say to do that?
Because he wants you to fail.
No, that's you, Christian. No. That's what they say. That the earth is, that's what Luther said. What's his name? Luther, who nailed the Protestant Reformation guy. He was like,
Martin
Luther.
Martin Luther. He said the law was dirty, and then it was there to show you how dirty you were. It's like that's a law for that Bible's pretty much, I mean, universal laws in there, but that's pretty much for Jews who have to be priests. That doesn't, I mean, the law, you look at it, makes you feel yucky inside. It's like, oh, what do not, in Judaism we try to look that way. We're not set up to fail. We're tested to fail. We are tested to fail.
It's clear that Christians have a very false view of Judaism. I mean, that's absolutely clear.
How do you see that? Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you, dude. Go ahead.
No, I was done.
Okay, well, what is it? What is what you've discovered tonight, or is this something you've? Well, obviously you're atheist now and used to be Christian. I think that's probably a step up in many ways.
I thought I used to think that it was absolutely clear that Jesus was prophesied in the Old Testament, and that his name is what was his name? Emmanuel was a reference to Jesus, and tonight I realized that's all wrong. That's all out of context. Like any typical cult, Christianity is a cult of Judaism.
Right. It's, if I may, I've got some more contributions, if I may.
If you please.
You'll never let me live that down.
It's just our thing. It's our thing, I guess. Go ahead.
The story of the virgin birth, the angel appearing to Mary, announcing that she's going to have a baby, and then angel comes back and tells Joseph the same story. That story was taken from Samson, who preceded JC by quite a ways. It's exactly the scenario in Samson. The scenario where Pontius Pilate on Passover offered up the freedom of a prisoner, and he brought out two individuals before the crowd. The crowd chose the one that they wanted to survive, and Jesus went in for, or was set up for execution. And then immediately after that, Pontius Pilate turns and washes his hands. That is a mirror story of what was told to Aaron at the time of Moses, that there would be two goats brought at a certain time of the year. They would draw lots for the goat. One would be to Azazel. They would tie a scarlet thread around it, lead it off into the wilderness, push it off the cliff, and the person that did the deed had to wash himself and his clothes. It's just a mirror of these two goat offerings that Aaron was commanded to do. There are other similarities in the story, but whomever crafted all of this, pretty sharp. And I think it was a collaboration of minds actually that put this together.
Yeah. It's brilliant in many ways. I can't deny diabolical ingenuity.
Yeah.
It was brilliant. You know, they say Jesus was the perfect lamb, right? You've heard that. I grew up in a church that had a picture of the lamb with the P and the X thing. That was their stained glass. We didn't have idols in our church. We were Episcopalian, but my first church was low Episcopalian. And when you read the story, the lamb wasn't offered for sin. The lamb was offered because Egypt's most revered god was a lamb. And when it was time for the firstborn to come, because they killed the firstborn of Israel, it came on a night when their most sacred, see, they never liked the Jews because they herded goats, whereas the Egyptians worshipped them. Well, on Passover, on Pesach, God said, you will eat their most sacred God. You will eat it all night. You will keep eating it. And that what you can't eat, you will burn the day after. And you'll put the blood on its doorpost for all the Egyptians to see just how I'm going to treat their God. That was what brought about the 10th plague.
And they say that's a foreshadow.
They say it's a foreshadow, but I don't know, man. I don't know. Maybe you gain, it's vampiric in the Catholic Church. Eat flesh, eat, in effigy, flesh and blood to gain eternal life. I don't know. Maybe you're eating a lamb. You're gaining eternal life. You're eating like a vampire. Eat flesh and blood, boom, you're set. Flesh and blood of a human. You're set like a vampire.
That P and the X that you just mentioned?
Yes, Pax, yes.
Well, that was actually known as the Chi Rho. The X is Chi in Greek, and the P is pronounced Rho. Chi Rho, which was the early symbol, one of the earliest symbols of Christianity, and it was used for a very long time. And part of the reason that symbol came about was one how shall I say, tradition of the crucifixion was that he was actually crucified on an X-shaped cross, which was leaned up against a supporting back pole. Okay, you're not going to come off of this X, but the Chi portion, the P that sticks up in the middle, was the supporting back pole, and the part that forms the P was his head turned to the side. Can you get that mental image?
Yeah.
So that's where the Chi Rho symbol originally came from, because of the tradition that it was not actually a T-shaped cross. It was more of an X. They just nailed it to an X, and then they propped it up against a supporting pole in the back. That way you could do a lot more crucifixions.
There's an interesting read, and they've compiled most of it. It's called The Gospel According to Judas. It's one of the Dead Sea Scrolls. One of the texts that were banned by the Church of Rome. That's why they were preserved. And thank God for the monk who did it, to be honest with you. think about it this way. And this isn't in the Gospel of Judas, but I'm going to sidetrack. I'll get back to that maybe in a second. It was, give us your leader, and we'll let your followers live. He died for your freedom. He died for your salvation. He died so that we could keep talking about this, that we could continue the movement. Give us your leader. We'll let the plebs live. We'll let his followers, his poor, confused, led astray followers, we'll let them live. You give us him. That makes perfect freaking sense to me. I try to look at a very favorable view of Jesus because I do believe he was a real man. I know a lot of Jewish scholars will say he was invented. I think the character that we have now, the dead guy on a stick character, that was an invention. But I do believe that Jesus was a real guy. And the reason why he gets a bad rap isn't because of anything I think he did. I think it was because of what was done in his name after. And the prophecy says, if you're a descendant of Jeconiah, you're going to fail. You will not be fruitful. And look at what happened. Go ahead.
Do you think he was some kind of teacher or a prophet?
Yeah. I think he was a revolutionary. I think he looked at the state of the temple, which is a half-assed temple, was built for the sake, or the person who said it, you could build it was doing it for the sake of his God. It wasn't allowed for the sake of the God of Israel, unlike the Babylons, who actually had respect for Jews. Greeks even at first had respect for the Jewish people. Didn't understand them, but had some kind of respect. Rome, yeah. He saw the corruption of the temple. He saw the corruption of Jerusalem. And I think he wanted to change. He knew it was coming down. It was Micah, wasn't it? Or Malachi, who said this is it. This is the end of prophecy. The next time we get a prophet in Israel, the nations, however, aren't prohibited from a prophet. But in Israel, when they get it, the next time that Elijah will speak, it will be to herald the Messiah. And he said the temple's coming down. Ezekiel knew the temple was coming. He already gave us a vision of a third temple. So Jesus knew, considering he was talking to Isaiah in the synagogue, I think Jesus probably knew this was it. What are we going to do when we're scattered? How do we pray? God, Jesus says, our Father who art in heaven. Another thing you don't pray to Jesus for. Jesus himself said to pray to the Father. Who did Jesus pray to? The Father. That's who you pray to. That's who you follow. Follow the king, not the prince. Jesus knew it was happening. The temple was corrupt. Jerusalem was corrupt. The land of Isaiah was corrupt. Rome was shite. He knew this. He saw it, and he was doing the best he could. That's what I believe in Jesus. And I think he turned in because give us your leader, and we'll let the. Of course, Rome didn't let the followers live because it kept going. This one God thing was really catching on with these Gentile folk. The sense of justice, like, go ahead, Ross. Yeah.
Well, that's what I was going to say, because if you read in the book of Acts, it's talking about the Gentiles, the God-fearers that are coming back and asking. And that's where they came up and said that if you abstain from things that were offered to idols, eating blood, and so forth, you do well. He cites some of the 7 laws in the book of, I think it's Acts chapter 15. So there were Gentiles that were trying to come back closer to God. And at the time, I think the movement that was involving the Gentiles, that was the part that I feel like Christianity was set up to steal, to take away the Gentiles, to keep them from coming closer to God. And I'm going to throw you another monkey wrench. I've told you this before. You've heard me talk about it. It's all, there's a Facebook page on it for just as well. It's called the Talpiot Tomb. Talpiot, Talpiot. And the tomb was discovered There were 10 ossuaries in the tomb. Jesus, son of Joseph, was written on one of the ossuaries. Miriamne Mara, Mary Magdalene on the other. Maria, Mary, Jesus' mother. Jude, son of Jesus, was in there, and James, the brother of Jesus, son of Joseph. All of these ossuaries were clearly written, analyzed, analoged, taken away to the Israel Antiquities Authority and filed. And so, yeah, if, you know, the evidence is there for him being married and having had a child. All of the names fit. There was a Matthew also found inside this ossuary. And as you may or may not know, they've also discovered the ossuary of Caiaphas, Caiaphas the high priest, who was the one who was set up by Rome. They put him in the office of high priest after having taken Annas out.
Wait, are you saying Jesus had kids?
A child, at least one, Judah. You can go on the Talpiot tomb or read about it, research it. There's a scholarly bunch of group that have had discussions about it for forever. It was discovered back in the 1980s when they were building an apartment complex in a little community called Talpiot. The ossuaries were documented by an archaeologist, and initially they tried to cover it back up. Well, they did, but one of the ossuaries, all of the ossuaries eventually were taken out. You can read about it; it's all over the internet. Jacopo Vitici's done a TV series on it, written books about it. It's up there, but there's a lot of mystery and some things that, but anyway, oh yeah, Caiaphas, the family tomb of Caiaphas was discovered. Caiaphas had a son, Joseph, son of Caiaphas, who they think was actually the high priest at the time because Caiaphas was very old. They found 2 crucifixion nails inside that tomb. One was actually inside the ossuary of Caiaphas, and the other was just outside of the ossuary. They did all the forensic tests, limestone test, yada, yada, yada. It's been proven up and down the scale, any way you want to look at it, that all of this is real, real, real. But you won't hear anybody talking about it because it blows the lid off of everything you were ever told.
It nullifies the idol. It makes him less sacred. It makes him a human being. That's why I like The Last Temptation of Christ. If you ever see the movie The Last Temptation of Christ, it was a Scorsese flick in '88. Christians hate it, picket signs, and evil devil shit. You watch that movie, and Jesus, that's how I learned Jesus. When I rediscovered Torah, if you will, when I discovered Torah, and I went to my first synagogue and talked to my first bunch of Jewish men who were there, and I went home and I was diving into Judaism, and I decided to rent the movie that all the Christians said was bad. It was The Last Temptation of Christ. Rented it, and it's my favorite Jesus movie. There's not a better production of Jesus ever made. It makes him a human being. It makes him a human being I can relate to. He becomes brother Jesus. He becomes my brother.
He was pretty human in that movie.
You've seen it.
Yeah.
He was very human, and there's a struggle that human beings have. I thought the author was great at getting to. Humans have, in Judaism, a human being has 2 souls, as an earthly soul and a heavenly soul, if you will. We share the same soul that an animal shares. A dog, a cat, a lizard, a fish. There's a soul in every living creature. But there's something in man that attaches himself to something beyond the box, thinking outside the box kind of a thing. That revolutionary, or not revelationary, if you will, thinking outside the box, stroke of genius kind of thing that humans have a tendency to, not tendency, it's their nature to, incorporate in their lives. That's the neshama. That's the heavenly soul. I was thinking of something here. There was a reason for what I'm saying. I can't remember for the life of me what we were talking about because I got off on this. Dude, you said something and it sparked it. I don't know where it was going, but I hope it helped. And I'll shut up now.
Absolutely. I was about to say something and I forgot too.
Okay.
About that.
Hanasa, shalom, welcome back.
Thank you. I had a phone call.
You buzzed out there for a second. Oh, Nelson left. Maybe he'll be back. There he is. Okay, he's back.
Musical.
Did you remember what you were talking about? I don't remember what I was talking about, so just asking.
Where were we?
I was going on about
Nefesh and neshama.
the nefesh and the neshama, the neshama, the godly soul, the nefesh, the animal soul.
Right. We're talking about Jesus and the fact that he can't be human.
Oh,
right?
Oh, well, there's a struggle that mankind. You're the man. Last temptation of Christ. Okay.
Yes.
There's a struggle that man has with that. It's just part of our nature right now, and that's why the law of idolatry was given, Noah and his descendants, because, we have a tendency to. We have a tendency to struggle with the mundane and the divine. Our nature is both mundane, like the dirt, and divine, like the breath of life that God breathes into your nostrils. He's that intimate. How much more intimate can you be with your creation? So I think I appreciate that movie so much because it deals directly with that struggle, and for that I can see I can see myself in the Jesus character. It humanizes him. It frees his soul. It frees him. In my mind, free through that kind of thinking. When you see him for what he is, for better and worse, warts and all. He wasn't perfect, and I get his arguments from what we've got in his history. I get his arguments. I get why he said the things he does. You must be the Messiah. Shh! Don't tell anybody that. If you want to believe it, fine, but don't say it to anybody. I get that. I get a lot of the stuff that happens. If he was a human sacrifice, he was taken off the cross. Only one of the Gospels mentioned he even got stabbed. Isaac he was 32 years old. He stuck his neck out. Lord, I'm ready. And he didn't have to offer his son. Even Jesus didn't have to offer himself, according to what we've read. He was taken down before he could die. People hung up on crosses for days. The crows picked out their eyes. It wasn't a pleasant thing. You just got nailed. That was it. You weren't dead. He was taken off the cross beforehand. If John was right, he did get a stabbing wound, okay. But nobody else talks about that.
Let me ask you a question. Even though you don't believe the story, right? Do you see everything, like the Christian story, like the law points to this human sacrifice of a God who becomes human? Do you find that in any way appealing?
Absolutely not. Terrific. Torah says one man cannot pay for another man's sins. The son shall not pay for the father's sins. He wasn't taking. He makes sense as the guy who lays himself on a grenade to save his platoon. Bring us your leader. We'll let the followers survive. That makes sense. That's a warrior. That's somebody who would die to save other people. I find that to be worthy of veneration and honor. Do I believe that, you know, him being nailed to a piece of wood somehow absolves me from, you know, adultery or murder? No, not at all. And no, I think it's horrible. Jesus is like lawyers in our days. You know, you got lawyers who represent people that don't exist. We call them corporations. Or they'll represent you in court. Or, you know, same little bunch of schmucks. They want to represent you. You don't stand before justice. You don't stand as yourself. You can't stand as a dignified human being in court. We've created a system that allows some schmuck, some low-life piece of dirt to stand between you and justice. Hell no. Fuck that. I will stand before the judge and I will speak my mind. And if she or he finds me guilty, then I'd be guilty. Damn it. Same thing with God. If I'm going to screw up, I will answer for that before God myself. Damn it. I don't want a lawyer. I don't want to go between. I want some dude who never met me to speak on my behalf. Who is this schmuck? No, I will stand before God for my own sins and I will pay for them. I don't need another man to take them away from me. I need my pain. I need my sin. If I that's who I am. The choices I have made have led me to who I am today. And I'll be damned if I let anybody else take it away. Not that I would ever, I'm not talking smack on Jesus, but you tell me that I got to worship that guy over there who's obviously an idol? You want me to put my sins on him and have him die? No. In Judaism, when you make an offering, it's a barbecue one for the priest because they don't have an inheritance. They got to eat. A peace feast offering, a meal offering. But if I sin knowingly, I don't get to offer an animal for that. There's no, if you offer an animal for a sin, it's by something you did inadvertently that you didn't know you were sinning or it was an accident or whatever. You don't get to offer up an offering to God when you know you did something wrong. God's going to, excuse, what? Please. Please. You know, you can bring flowers home to your wife, but if you're not sorry for what you did wrong, she ain't going to buy the flowers, but she'll take the flowers and throw them in your face. God will do the same thing. You can't offer an animal or flower or whatever. You can't make an offering for something you intentionally did wrong. That's between you and God and you and the person you wronged. And you have to go through what's called teshuvah. You have to make good on what you did wrong. Yeah, the idea of a human sacrifice paying for my sin. No, I'm the dude. If I were Jewish, I'd be the Jew that pulls him off the cross at night when no one was looking. If he stayed up there that long, I'd be the dude petitioning to get him off of there. Yeah. I would be up on a cross because I would be saying that Rome sucks. But
I have something to
go.
In standing with what you're saying, every person answers for their own sin. Nobody else answers for them. And that's clearly pointed out in Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden story. What did you do? He points the finger. Well, that woman you gave me goes over to Eve. What did you do? Always speak. Goes over. Okay, well, there's nobody left to blame, right? So the snake is punished for what he did. Cursed, crawling on your belly. Eve, you will suffer the pain of childbirth. Adam, you and the whole family, the whole kit and caboodle, are kicked out of the garden. So each one was punished for their part. He didn't take the fall for Adam, and the snake didn't take the fall for both of them.
Yeah, you got to pay for your own sin. When you screw up and you don't fix it, you have to stand before God on your own. And, you know, God, it's severity at first and mercy at the end.
There is no, the devil made me do it.
Baruch HaSatan. I'll say that right now. Thank God for the, blessed be the adversary, because without the adversary, I would not know good. That's all that God wants. What does God want from you? He wants you to be a good person. Take care of the, James said it. Here's to James. Take care of the orphan and the widow and love your neighbor as yourself. Boom. That's, I can't knock that. Nobody can knock that. That's what God wants from you. He didn't want dead animals or shekels. He wants you to take care of your neighbor and be a good person. Hold the door for the old lady.
You know, when we're davening on Yom Kippur, it actually says that tefillah, prayer, tzedakah, and charity and chesed, acts of loving kindness, actually shut the Satan up when he's trying to accuse you of things on Yom Kippur. So, I mean, you can completely stop the judgment altogether doing those 3 things in the acts of to basically make teshuvah. I mean, you don't need anyone else. You just need to repair what's wrong.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Acts of loving kindness, and the other again?
So it's tefillah, tzedakah, and chesed.
Explain. Okay, explain for posterity. Explain those 3, please.
Okay, so tefillah is prayer. You know, that's acknowledging that you've screwed up, and you know you're asking for God to forgive you. Then you have tzedakah, which is giving to the poor, also known as charity. And then you have chesed, which chesed means loving kindness, acts of loving kindness, things that you do for random strangers for no reason whatsoever to help them out.
And this isn't
to everyone. It's also known as mercy. Be merciful.
Aside from prayer, this is an ongoing act. It's not necessarily you doing this order. This is an ongoing thing. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you know, mercy. You know, if you need to forgive those around you when they ask for you to forgiveness. Because if you don't forgive people, then how can you expect God to forgive you?
Amen. Oh, amen.
I'll amen that.
How can you ask for mercy if you won't show it? And how can you ask for forgiveness if you can't give it? I've been dealing with that a lot lately myself. And I'm like, that jerk that just cut you off on the freeway that's driving 90 miles an hour like a bat out of hell and you thinking they're an idiot. That could be some mother that's rushing their very sick baby to the hospital because they need emergency treatment. Wouldn't this jerk? You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Yes, sir.
We think the worst, but how do we know that some guy is not racing to get his pregnant wife at the hospital, you know?
Mm-hmm. Our friend Yochanan, John, he's real big on looking for the positive, and it's his struggle. It's an ongoing project, like a train, like a train set. You know, you kind of keep tweaking it as you go along in life to find the positive in all situations, even a possible positive.
10 minutes.
Rabbi Katz is real good at teaching us that, wasn't he? He was when he started the denim classes last year. He was getting through my head anyway that we come into the court, we come into justice with the utmost severity possible. Hence, the Noahide gets the death penalty for anything. We come out of court with mercy. And I know a religious court judge is Rabbi Dove, and he would say that when you go into a Jewish court, you're going to come in with conflict. But when you exit a Jewish court, you want the 2 warring sides, opposing sides, to be shaking hands and eating a meal and breaking bread afterwards. That's a Jewish court. That's justice right there. When you can work out the differences and shake hands and share a meal and bring goodness, bring the light to the world. That's the true nature of a Jewish court. And me too. I get hung up on the justice, on severity, on the hard line. But in the end of the judgment, it is merciful. It is balanced. It's good. That's my 2 cents.
There is no hanging judge.
Precisely. So Nelson, is this different from what you've heard in the past, huh? Probably. It's about that time. We're going to end the live portion of the broadcast now. Please join our Facebook page. We also have a page here on Google Plus, the Nilvah Nexus, Facebook and Google Plus. We do this every Thursday. Anybody who's interested is welcome to join us. On behalf of Kadasa, Chris, Nelson, Rosalie, and Ross and myself, Shabbat Shalom, y'all.
Shucks.